What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast, episode 106. John Hoover, Ryan Chapman are both sickly. Hooves in COVID protocol, Ryan's in flu protocol. Josh Callaway here. I'm the only healthy one of the team right now. Hopefully it stays that way, but we're pushing onward. How are we feeling? Let's start with Hoove. He's been in COVID protocol for about a week now. How do you feel?
I'm okay. I didn't actually ever test positive, so I'm not in COVID protocol. I go to work every day. I sit in the studio. I do my radio show, and I come home. Now, my wife and my son both tested positive, so it's very likely I might have had it, but I never tested positive. So as of right now, bro, it's just a head cold. It is a nose and throat head cold, and it's a lot of snot. It's a lot of Kleenexes. What am I supposed to do? I got to go to work. So here we are.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah, the Oklahoma Sooners beat does not stop for illnesses or anything. Ryan, you're battling the flu. You actually missed the Kansas basketball game last night because you're just going through it right now. How you feeling?
Yeah, that was a bummer. Not great. Shout out to our local pharmacy for just refusing to fill my flu meds for like all day. So I like to think of myself as a sickness hipster. All this COVID going around, screw that. I went old school with the flu. Felt a little bit better today, but we're still rolling. Got to catch up on that Kansas game at about 2 a.m. last night when I couldn't sleep. So thank goodness for the DVR, right?
Right, absolutely. That's how Hoove lives his whole life, is just watching games like days after they happen. Have you watched the Rams game? Can we spoil that? Are we allowed to talk about that?
By the way, I know Hoove watched the Rams game because like 2 hours after the opening quarter happened, he's live tweeting as he's watching the game about Sean McVay and challenges. I almost wanted to text him and be like, John, you know that you're not live with everybody else, right?
Hey, listen, DVRing games is a long, colorful history in my house. I was only about an hour behind last night when McVay had those 2 challenges that produced 2 touchdowns. I knew I was behind because I looked at the little guide on the thing. But, bro, my wife used to watch Thunder games. 3 days old. Perkins, what are you doing? Catch the ball. Ibaka, rotate over and blocks a shot. So I'm that's like, incredible. Holly, not only can they not hear you from Broken Arrow, but this was 3 days ago.
They're in a different city now.
They're in a different city. We're in a time machine. And it's a long, colorful history of DVRing games in my house.
Yeah, no, that was Monday night. Who is, of course, a Rams fan, said to me and Ryan, no spoilers, don't say anything. And they jump out like 21-0. I was like, well, he's going to be happy in like 3 hours whenever he decides to watch this. So there you go. It was not a good weekend for Oklahoma quarterbacks. We may have to throw that in there at some point. Rough times for Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray. Their seasons both come to an end. Lots of Oklahoma guys still playing, though, because there's guys on like every single playoff team somehow left, which is kind of crazy. But the NFL playoffs roll on. Meanwhile, we continue to deal with the insanity that is just okay. Whenever we left last week, if you guys remember, I like signed off the show saying Caleb Williams will have next week's show. We'll talk about what Caleb Williams decided to do, because it was, in my mind, a complete lock that he would have decided by now. And we sit here, we're recording late even. We're recording, it's 9:28 Wednesday night right now. He still has not said. He's been in the portal like 3 weeks. I don't know what the holdup is. I mean, you guys can take that if you want. Just what do you think Caleb Williams is still mulling at this point? I mean, he's talked to the schools. He knows what his options are. He's done visits. When is this decision going to get made? It's kind of crazy. It hasn't happened yet, at least in my mind. I thought it would have happened weeks ago, let alone days ago. I mean, over a week ago, I thought this was done.
Yeah, so we had told you, we had alluded to this last week, that we had been told the Williams camp was content to wait out the NFL coaching carousel. But the context we talked about that last week was we were laughing because that is ridiculous. There are things such as, like, we know the score, but academics do have to matter at some point as far as just purely being enrolled at an institution so you're eligible to play and being there for spring practice, because even if he comes back to Oklahoma, he's having a new spring install wherever he goes. So now, guys, that's the only thing that could make any sense, right? Is that he truly
Right.
is hell-bent on waiting out the NFL coaching carousel. So when you look at that, there are a few names that have popped up. Obviously, the Joe Brady connection. We're pretty confident here that Joe Brady would much rather take a quarterback coach job in the NFL than head back to college football in any capacity, just because he doesn't like recruiting. The other name that comes up a lot is Nathaniel Hackett, the Green Bay OC, but he's getting interviewed for NFL jobs right now. So to me, that doesn't make any sense unless you're just looking at those guys' staffs for someone that might not make the jump over and then come to college football and run
Also,
their offense.
the Packers might play for another month.
Yeah,
I mean, how
yeah.
long? Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, it's just a huge question mark because things have gone quiet. All we have is the same information that we had a week ago come to the table. At least that's all I have. And it just makes less and less and less sense the longer this thing goes.
You know, I think there's a little bit of possibility that the top of the food chain could shift everything, and that's Jim Harbaugh. He's hiring coaches now, so it's starting to look like he's going to stay at Michigan. But for the most part, you know, if you're Caleb Williams and his family, and you're trying to look for the next best business decision, that might be something that's in the back of your mind. You know, the carousel begins rolling again when if Harbaugh takes the Bears job or another NFL job, then who takes the Michigan job? Then what does so-and-so do? Also, guys, listen, I've said this on the radio show, and I know it on its surface sounds a little preposterous, but if Jerry Jones got wind that Lincoln Riley might be interested in the Dallas Cowboys job, I think Jerry might move that needle. I think he might say, hey, we could get Lincoln Riley to replace, you know, be the next, you know, whoever, Shanahan, McVay, whoever, and bring him to Dallas. And then what does that do for Caleb? You know, you commit, you enroll at USC, then all of a sudden you're stuck at USC without Lincoln Riley. And so you've made a premature decision. And the whole USC thing, they started classes last week. They're on quarter system. Oklahoma started classes, well, not last week, week before. Oklahoma started late last. Is that right? No, they started Monday. They started this week.
They started
Tuesday.
Yeah. Tuesday because of Martin Luther King
Tuesday because MLK.
USC started last week. Oklahoma started this week. And that's, I would think that complicates things a little bit, kind of speeds things up a little bit. If you're a college football player, you need to know when class starts. You need to know when you're eligible. That's the thing. Nobody cares what classes you take. Nobody cares what graduate program you're enrolled in or what track you're on. No, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is that you're eligible according to the NCAA. You have to be enrolled. You have to have certain classes toward your degree and all that kind of stuff. So he needs to get going academically as well. He might be in some situation where he's saying, "Come on, can we move this thing along, please?"
Right, and it's foreign to me that he hasn't made it, and I can't help but wonder, and you guys can say if you think it's legitimate or not, but I can't help but ponder the idea of, you think he just went on the USC visit and didn't like it, like that was the plan, USC was the plan, but then he went out there and he checked it out and was like, actually that's kind of lame, and now he's kind of left saying, I don't really want to go there, but that was the plan. And now I don't know what to do. Like, is there any, it almost feels like that's possible to me. Like he just went out there, was unimpressed by the facilities and things like that. And now he's sitting there here saying, I don't know if I can go back to Oklahoma. UCLA stinks and USC's facilities stink. And now those were my options. And now I don't really know what to do. I feel like that's possible.
It's a possibility. And let me just preface this next comment by saying this. There is a ton of fatigue right now on the topic of Caleb Williams. So we're gonna ball this up and we're gonna throw it over our shoulder and we're gonna move on after this. But for the most part, we just got to get this out of the way. This is the albatross that's hanging around Oklahoma's neck right now. Is what does Caleb Williams do? The sword of Damocles dangles, right? To mix my metaphors there. But he's got to figure it out. There's some plan B's in place. And frankly, I don't think they're plan B's anymore in Oklahoma's eyes, Brent Venables' eyes, Jeff Lebby. I think they've moved on from Caleb Williams. And I think that's what the fan base really wants to hear is, okay, whatever he's going to do, he's going to do. We're pretty confident he's leaving. So let's go ahead and sign Dylan Gabriel. Let's go ahead and recruit the heck out of Chuba Purdy. Let's go ahead and recruit the heck out of Jaxson Dart. And that's where this conversation's got to go next is Jaxson Dart is – what about a straight trade class of 2021 freshman Jaxson Dart for and you might throw in a tight end or a wide receiver too while you're at it.
Yeah,
but
you also do
Caleb Williams.
Yeah, you also potentially do Michael Trigg for Mario Williams. You make it a twofer, a four-player trade. We'll talk about Mario Williams in just a second, and maybe another Oklahoma player going to USC as well. But yeah, that's the kind of the next part of this is Jaxson Dart. Obviously, he has his visit. It seems like he's down to OU and Ole Miss. A late contender emerges today, I guess, in BYU. Supposedly, he took a visit. I didn't see. He hasn't said it. He didn't post photos, but it was reported that he visited BYU today. So maybe they're in the contender status or as well for his services. It seems like him and Michael Trigg, the USC tight end, are a package deal. And you wonder, is Jaxson Dart sitting there waiting for Caleb Williams also in both capacities? A, is he going to be at OU? Because I don't want to go there if he's at OU. And then B, I could just go back to USC if I want if he's not there. Jaxson Dart may be sitting here doing what we're doing, which is waiting for Caleb to make his mind before he makes his. Now, that could all go out the window if Dart just announces tonight or tomorrow or something, but you can't help but wonder if that's part of this as well as part of the holdup on all of this. I mean, I certainly would have thought after last week's show, by this show, we'll know everything. We'll know where Caleb's is, we'll know where Dart is, and we're still sitting here a week later. We don't know anything.
Yeah, I don't know if the Caleb Williams factor specifically is as much a variable for Dart on the OU end of things, just because if that's what Dart would be worried about at OU, then it would make sense to say he also should be pretty worried about Dillon Gabriel already being in place as a guy that's played more college football than him and played college football under Jeff Lebby in that offense specifically. Yeah. So if you're talking about Dart to USC, going back there, that makes sense. Or why he might pick an Ole Miss or a BYU over Oklahoma. I think that both those things make sense. I'm just not sure if that specifically the Caleb Williams factor would matter with OU, because I think that's another thing you're going to have to fight with Dart is, okay, yes, Dillon Gabriel could leave for the draft at the end of next year, but he also has 3 years of eligibility left. He's not a guy with NFL measurables, all that stuff. So if you don't believe that you're going to get a fair shake, if that's Lebby's guy, if you're to believe the rumors that a big reason why Gabriel entered the portal was he was going to go to Ole Miss to reunite with Lebby until all of this happened, then why would you believe you're actually going to enter a fair or actual open quarterback battle? So that would make a ton of sense. So there's a lot for him to weigh. But again, the same exact thing we said with Caleb Williams, clock's ticking. You got to make a decision and get enrolled somewhere.
Yeah. What do you think of Dart? As far as, the timeline on him, do you think he is waiting for Caleb Williams? So you think that's not a factor at all? And
yeah,
I mean, where do you think OU stands on landing him? It seems like they're the favorite, but if they are, it'd be marginal. Them and Ole Miss, it's almost 50-50. It feels like. But
it feels like 50-50 between Oklahoma and Ole Miss. But when you throw in a local team, future Big 12 team in BYU, it's just down the road from where he grew up, basically. He's a Utah kid. He was in Utah as a high school senior in 2020. He was the National Gatorade Player of the Year. I mean, he's a hell of a quarterback. He's a hell of a prospect. Mm-hmm. He's good enough to play at USC. He's good enough to play at Oklahoma for sure. Some of his games, he had a couple of 300-yard games last year, a couple of 200-yard games. Touchdown interception ratio could have been a little bit better. But, completed something like 63% of his passes, whatever it was. A very impressive prospect. A guy that 6'3", 215, he's got the tools to be able to lead a college football program at a high level like Oklahoma. Don't think that just because he's from Utah that he can't. He was not a very good high school football player in the state of Utah. No, this kid's super legit. So where does Oklahoma stand with him? We have no idea. We have no way of knowing. It's funny. There was some feedback on some of the tweets. They put the Sooners uniform on, right, and then they go post for pictures and do all this stuff, and then they go to Ole Miss and they do the same thing. And this was just a few days apart, and it's funny because some people were responding to those tweets. Hey, they don't look like they're having as much fun at Ole Miss as they did at Oklahoma. I think we got a real shot. I'm like, that's probably reading a little too much into it right there.
Right.
But yeah, who knows where they stand, and who knows if BYU's a real player? They very well could be.
Go ahead, Ryan.
If BYU becomes the spot, is anyone worried about the Brent Venables revenge game in 2024 when Oklahoma and BYU become Big 12 West rivals?
Yeah, supposedly.
Supposedly. BYU's got an incumbent starter, by the way. So it's
I was just about to say that, Hoover, is that they have a starter in place. So that doesn't seem to make any sense to me from Dart's perspective. But the home state thing is tempting for some guys. Other guys, it's like they'd rather do anything than be in their home state. It just really depends on the person. If he values it, that's a big thing for him. If not, then obviously we'll see where he ends up. So I'll say this again, I guess, by next week's show, surely we know this stuff. There's no way. What are the parents thinking? Like, these guys are just missing school. My parents would never let me miss just weeks of school. Like, that's what these guys are doing. They're not doing anything. They're not going to any classes. They're just chilling right now. Caleb Williams was on a beach the other day. I saw it on Instagram. Now he's back in Maryland. He's just bouncing everywhere. I don't know what's going on with these guys. But hopefully eventually we actually do get decisions. It's not just speculation all the time. And we'll see. But one guy who did make his decision, you got something, Ryan?
I was like, would it not just be incredible if this entire time, like, Caleb Williams is just enrolled in online classes at Oklahoma, goes through the entire spring in the portal, Oklahoma. Then this summer, he borrows it. He's like, okay, now is when I make the decision. I'm doing it in the summer.
Gosh, it's crazy. We knew he was in no rush, but this has been even crazier than I thought. I can't believe it's January 19th, going on 20th, and we still don't know. It's nuts. The Alamo Bowl was forever ago. It was like a month ago. Anyway, one guy who did make his decision, which seemed to tip Caleb Williams' hand, but maybe not, was Mario Williams. So he decides officially he is going to USC. It seemed like it was headed that way. Him and Caleb visited at the same time. We talked about that last week. Mario Williams, and they were in the full get up and all that. Mario Williams announces he's going to USC. We all kind of thought, okay, he knows, right? He knows Caleb Williams is going there. Why would he go there if he didn't know that? Why would he go there to a coach who didn't really use him like a ton? And B, they have no quarterbacks. Without Caleb Williams, they have no quarterback. If Dart goes and Caleb Williams doesn't go there, they have no quarterbacks. So why would Mario Williams go there? But again, we're sitting here still waiting. And then, of course, the TMZ, we're going TMZ mode, the drama of, and I don't know if you guys, Ryan definitely did. I don't know if who of you saw the developments today of who of you did, I'm pretty sure, of Nick Benito, who called out guys going to USC. It seemed like he certainly meant Mario Williams, but then Mario Williams tweeted today, no, he's not talking about me. He's talking about Latrell McCutcheon, who took a visit to USC, and it sounds like that's where things are trending there. And so Benito just ripped him on Twitter. Perry on Winfrey too, because Perry on Winfrey gets in on everything. He comments and gets in on everything.
Wish he was this aggressive on the field.
It's mayhem. It's mayhem. He was on Brock Purdy. Ask Brock Purdy about that. And then so it's just mayhem. It just kind of absorb it all. Who the Mario Williams moved USC and Latrell McCutcheon seemingly crazy move, considering the way he left things with Roy Manning. Now, Roy Manning wouldn't be his coach because he's not cornerbacks coach out there. But the way he left things with that staff, it's crazy to go join all those guys, essentially. That's nuts to me. But that seems like where we're headed.
I'm a little struck by this development because it's kind of, I mean, I don't personally monitor every college football program out there, but I can say unequivocally that I have not seen before a player go after another player like Nick Benito went after Latrell McCutcheon. During the season, Latrell McCutcheon got in the lineup, had some struggles, freshman season, it's coming. Oh gosh, I got burned for a touchdown. He gets benched. That's the normal progression of being a college football player. You get in at a young age, you get burned, you go sit down. I mean, that's how it works. But he got benched. We don't know what was said. We don't know what the chemistry was between him and Alex Grinch and Roy Manning. But Latrell McCutcheon's dad goes on Twitter and posts just flamethrower material on the OU coaching staff. F the OU coaching staff is what he said. And you would think that would burn the bridge, right? That he's most definitely, when Lincoln Riley goes to USC and takes Roy Manning and Alex Grinch with him, you would think that bridge is not going to exist. But no, what does he do? He jumps in the portal. He's going to eventually, we're pretty sure, right? He hasn't committed yet to USC, but we think that that's probably inevitable. And wait, now did he commit? He didn't commit to USC, right?
No, he's not committed.
Not yet.
Okay,
he took a visit, and it sounds like it's headed that way.
That's what I'm thinking of. He took a visit, and that's when Benito jumps up and says, "Man, all these guys that flamed the coaching staff last year, now they want to go play for the same coaches at USC." Which is, I'm sorry, I've never seen that before. And I told Sam Mays, I said, we're in a new era of social media where players say things and parents say things, and they're going at it. It's player on player crime. And what has been the mantra for college football? I got your back. You got my back. We're a team. We're together in this. But man, the transfer portal and social media have changed that dynamic completely.
It's unbelievable. And the exchange tonight, if you haven't seen it, and part of it got deleted, so you might not, but internet never forgets. We have screenshots. Right. Was Mario Williams, because Nick Benito's tweet, which I don't have handy, he basically said what you said, Hoove. These guys talk trash on the coaching staff all year. Now they want to join him at USC. OU doesn't need them, whatever, something to that extent. And a lot of people took that as Mario Williams, right? Because he had just committed. It was the same day. So it's not crazy to draw that connection. You're not out of your mind or anything to do that. Mario Williams tweeted, OU fans, y'all don't know what you're talking about, so stop tagging me. Nick Benito wasn't talking about me. And Perrion Winfrey replied, boo, with tomato emojis, like basically disappointed. And then this other guy, just a fan, came in and said, yeah, he was talking about at Latrell McCutcheon. Latrell McCutcheon, of course, gets in there because he can't help it and said, yeah, and I clearly don't give a blank about Nick Benito. Then Perrion Winfrey replies to that saying, you're doing a lot, young buck. Get off the media. And Latrell McCutcheon replied, FOH, which is blank out of here. And that's the end of that, which Perrion Winfrey, I think, deleted his reply. So you might get a little confused. It was Perrion. That's who Latrell McCutcheon got upset with. So It's just a mess. Ryan, it's drama. It's hilarious. It's funny. OU fans are loving it. I love it because it's just fun. And
don't worry. At one point, Latrell McCutcheon did say, y'all are lucky that I've matured. Otherwise, it would be wild, which I'm just like, if this is what mature Latrell McCutcheon looks like, I'm sad that we didn't get to see the other thing. But maybe that
came right after he tweeted. He tweeted like, OU fans, I don't owe you guys nothing, like in all caps. Right. And then he deleted it. And then he tweeted, I've matured. I don't need to tweet. It's like you just did like 10 minutes ago. Okay.
Yeah, my publicist texted me and said, delete the tweet, you idiot. No. And look, this may be hindsight's 2020, all that stuff, but these are conversations that the three of us had. Unfortunately for you guys listening to this, we didn't necessarily have these on the mic during the season, but we had kind of questioned something's off about this team and the culture just feels weird. You've got one side of the football saying one thing, the other side of the football says the other thing. If you had just walked in, we would have thought that it was like a bowl season scenario where you were listening to one team's defense and then the other team's offense because it was two different groups. Maybe all this stuff afterward just kind of speaks to the culture or lack thereof that was on this football team, just because there are a ton of other programs going through this exact thing. Is it as high profile as Oklahoma? Maybe not, but there are teams where coaches get poached every year. Sorry, Sooner fans. It's not something historically that's ever happened to this program, but it happened right now. And you don't see that crap. You don't see any of that. Guys go with them. This is not something that's super visible. So maybe it just kind of speaks to the whispers that everyone had said all around, which is that something feels off. Right. The team feels like when the going gets tough, it doesn't get going. It wasn't one of those groups. And maybe this is just the latest example of that, is that you have the guys who are supposed to be the leaders of the team, who we had said there's something wrong with the leadership, right? That there's a lot of guys that want to be leaders. Doesn't seem like there's anyone that is being a leader. Well, they're chirping on social media. And then the young guys who have transferred are rebelling back against them on social media. All in all, it's just not good for the look of anyone or for the culture or lack thereof that was on campus. So again, maybe this is just armchair quarterback hindsight 2020, but it does seem to reveal that things weren't all just smooth and roses and we're so close as Lincoln Riley tried to project all year this last year.
Right. Just unbelievable stuff. And we'll see what Latrell McCutcheon does decide to do. It sounds like that's the way we're trending. And it makes that video, it's still hilarious where he called the Oregon guy a walk-on, but it loses some steam afterward when you kind of just make a fool of yourself a little bit. That video is so funny forever, but it won't be as beloved by OU fans because of the aftermath now, which is the biggest shame of the whole situation. Meanwhile, and we'll wrap up the segment on this, and we'll get to obviously all the transfer portal additions they've made. They've been very busy. The backdrop to this is the fact that, like we were saying earlier, they're back. I mean, the team is back working, in Everest. Messing with Schmitty has begun. I don't know if you saw the video today of him like talking to the team. He used dog. He did like all the Schmitty like memes in 20 seconds, basically. It was great. It was an awesome 22 seconds. Great video. But they're back. Marvin Mims is back. Not that we didn't know he was, but he is out there doing it. His dad tweeted, people ask me if he's back. He never left. There is no back. He never left. So that kind of little question mark is now answered. Marvin Mims is back. So the guys are off doing winter workouts. That started this week, Hoove. I mean, obviously we're so far from the next season, but they're starting to work with Schmitty, and it became a thing. Everybody was tweeting about like, oh gosh, day one with Schmitty. Braden Willis tweeted that he liked it. He likes the mentality change. It's kind of been a lot of that this couple weeks or this couple days, which again, we just started. So maybe people need to give it to the summer before they decide if they like the Schmitty lifestyle. But for now, it seems like, they're off to a good start.
Yeah, Jackson Sumlin posted on Twitter this morning, showed up for a 7 a.m. workout at 5:50 a.m. because I didn't know what to expect. That's so how funny. You do it, young man. That's how you do it. He's standing around for Sam Mays was telling the story about on the air today on the Sports Animal about the day before winter workouts began. The day before, you're worried about it all day. Then you go to sleep and you think, well, I got to be up at 5, so I'm going to go to sleep at like 9, right? And then you lay down at 9 and you're not tired at all, and your mind's wandering. All of a sudden you look and it's midnight, and then it's 2:30, and then you think, wait a minute, if I fall asleep too late, I'm going to oversleep and sleep through the alarm and miss my first workout. They're going to kill me, hang me up, nail me to the side of the building. No. So I'm not sleeping. So guys show up to that thing strung out from not sleeping, and then they hit their first winter workout. Guess what the first thing is they do when they get back from the workout? They go to sleep. So it's got to be a stressful time for these guys, not because any other reason other than it's a brand new strength coach and a brand new head coach, and you've got a brand new position coach if you're on defense for sure. So they got to impress some guys. They got to make an impression on the new coaching staff, and things are going to be done a little differently around here. Then you add in the fact that it's Jerry Schmidt and not, Benny Wiley, the yoga instructor, as some of the other guys called him.
CrossFit.
Again,
CrossFit instructor.
I'll say this: I've never gone through a Schmitty workout, but I've seen them. I've never gone through or seen a Benny Wiley workout except for just little videos, right? So I got to say the Schmitty workout is probably 100% tougher.
Yeah, a lot less sledgehammering tires, I would imagine, with Schmitty around than with Wiley. Here was the big indicator that I needed to know that the team is taking this seriously. Michael Turk released his blog, and he straight up in the middle, it was like, just based off what I've seen from that first group of guys, I'm leaving my phone in my locker and not even Darren taking that bad boy into the facility to even get yelled at. But yeah, so everyone's back, getting back into the groove of it. We kind of saw too, Michael Turk also on his blog revealed something that had kind of been talked about, that they hired a full-time chef over at Headington for to up the nutrition level of every meal that they get fed, their post-workout cool-down meal, all that stuff. So that's just that's the standard in the SEC, right? That you've got all of these support staffs. We'll talk about some later, but more and more names keep getting added to the analyst and to the what would be the front office, quote unquote, if this were an NFL franchise. Those kind of roles continue to get filled in Norman, and so you're starting to see that transformation of Brent Venables and the commitment from Oklahoma's admin to push this program forward, not just on the field, not just we see that they're spending more on recruiting or they're willing to bring in whatever for the Champion Barbecue or whatever, but it's the actual manpower being committed to the program right now that's starting to roll itself forward. And it's not just former OU guys. Yes, there are some former OU guys there, but previously it felt like a ton of the analysts were your Ty Darlingtons, guys like that who are getting jobs now. But it wasn't hey, we're bringing this guy and this guy, and it's, hey, these are guys we think are smart who have been around the program. It's just a different mentality moving that forward. So some of the stuff that Lincoln Riley allegedly was not too happy with, looks like Oklahoma's getting all that solved and getting going here ahead of their move to the SEC.
Yeah, different looking program. That's for sure. It feels different and it looks different, and it shows you how much, a lot can change outside of just the football part. I know that might sound stupid, but like the X's and O's, the coaching, but just the overall way the program has run, it just feels so different already. Like it really does. And like the guys moving in and the coaches are out there helping them. Venables is literally carrying like some guy's desk. Like 0.0% chance Lincoln Riley ever did that. You know what I mean? They're just very different dudes. And the way the program is operating, you can already see we're like day 3 of the winter here. It's completely different. And so we'll see how that affects over time. But
it was like 22 degrees that day too on move-in day, and Venables is out there in a half zip with a desk under his arm and a lamp, and he's carrying stuff in. Now, here's the deal: I don't know if that was a photo op where he just jumps out of the SUV and grabs something and poses for a picture and then jumps back in the SUV. We don't know. I don't think Brent runs that way. I know Brent personally. I've known him for a long time, guys.
Right.
I don't think he's cut that way. I think he was carrying furniture and welcoming guys. I think it was Perrion again on Perrion Winfrey on social media came out and said,
tweet.
My head coach never came to my dorm room when I was, when he's standing there with his 2 new linebackers, Kanak and Kobe McKenzie. He's standing there, in their room because they're going to room together as freshmen. And Perrion's like, my head coach never came to my dorm room
with like the sad emoji.
Yeah,
so funny.
How long until some of these guys wrote Brent into some TikToks?
No kidding.
Tomorrow morning, yeah.
And then did you guys see Danny Stutzman's tweet? Had to decide to take the kids out to dinner tonight. It was McKenzie and Kanak. So pretty funny. The team seems to have a good synergy right now. And again, we're like 2 days in, but it just seems to have a nice vibe right now. All right. We'll go ahead and take our first break. That was a long first segment. Had a lot to get to. We have a lot more to get to. Transfer portal everywhere. People really thought Brent Venables might not hit the portal. Hilarious in hindsight. He's added 1 million guys. We'll talk about the new ones that have added over the last week next on the SI Sooners podcast.
Hey, listen up. Winter's here, okay? But you know the season's in Oklahoma. Cold one day, hot the next. That's a lot of work for your heating and air unit. But the guys at Trade Pros, they got you covered. Sign up for one of their no-hassle service plans. You can go pro, become elite, or the best deal's the MVC, most valuable customer. They'll come out twice a year and tune up your AC and your furnace. You get priority scheduling, and you get additional discounts. Just call Chris at Trade Pros, 405-316-0598. That's 405-316-0598. Or go to TradeProsOKC.com.
On Twitter, you can follow SI Sooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan is at Radios Ryan. Who's at Johnny Hoover? I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. And we're doing something new with this show. We're doing a video version. You can watch the show, something that Hoover and Ryan did in the past. We went to 3 guys. We got away from it. Now we're going to try and bring it back so you can watch the podcast each week on John's YouTube channel, which is just John Hoover Media, right? I believe that is correct. So you can watch the shows on there.
Unless we have technical difficulties, then
which is very possible. If you go to the YouTube right now, if you're listening on your phone, you go to the YouTube and it's not there, it's because something went wrong. But that's our plan. So be checking up with that. You can watch the shows on there if you want to do that from now on. A little bit easier, obviously, if you're just kind of hanging out at home, want to pull it up and watch on your computer or your smart TV or whatever, you can do that. So we're doing something a little new there moving forward here on the SI Sooners podcast. We'll probably do it most of the time. Obviously, I'm not going to commit to every time. If we're like on the road or something, it might get a little tricky. But for the most part, at least during the winter and the summer here, you should be able to watch the shows on Hoove's YouTube page. So be sure to check that out. All right.
Well, and who knows?
2.
Maybe we can work out something where if you can tell me what flavor of Pedialyte I've been smashing all episode long. Maybe we'll work out some sort of prize system. Who knows? Go over there and watch it.
I have a good old-fashioned OG Mountain Dew right now. I don't have.
How I wish I
have
had
some
one of
Sparks.
those.
I have some
West
Sparks
Virginia
in the.
moonshine.
I
Great moonshine,
have
boys. That's the best thing for a cold.
I have some Sparks in the fridge. Who've the new flavor. Big fan. I need Mountain Dew to sponsor me or get me on some commercials or something. I'm a huge fan, so they need to do it. I'm disappointed they don't follow me on Twitter. I've tweeted at them like 5 times. They usually reply and say like, "Thanks for buying," but they don't follow me back. It's disappointing. Anyway, segment 2, transfer portal. Mention again. I said right at the end of the last segment. It's so funny that we thought, you might not hit the portal because Brent Venables came from Clemson, where they just don't do that. Which Clemson actually just finally got their first ever transfer under Dabo, and it was just a former Clemson guy, Hunter Johnson. He's a former Clemson guy who left and came back. He's their first ever portal addition, believe it or not, which is insane in this era of college football to have never gotten a portal guy. But Oklahoma continues to be extremely active in the portal. We'll hit these guys one at a time, try to give our thoughts a little bit on what they add. They're all defense. It's been heavy defense emphasis in the portal. Obviously, they lost all those starters, need to replace guys, need to replenish, and Venables continues to add, for the most part, very veteran players, starting with Tulane defensive lineman Jeffrey Johnson comes across from the Green Wave. Obviously, he played against OU earlier this year, so he actually played a home game in Norman before being on the Sooners in a weird twist of fate there. So Jeffrey Johnson comes in from Tulane. What kind of an addition is this? I know it's a broad question, but what is Oklahoma getting here in Jeffrey Johnson?
I read Jason Kersey's story today on The Athletic, and he's a guy that got a lot of Power 5 offers, especially from schools in the South, growing up. And he got a lot of Power 5 offers until he was diagnosed with a specific scary kind of condition that they ended up finding out it was a false positive. This is according to Jason's story, but that forced a lot of teams or just made a lot of teams decide to stop recruiting him and pull back their offers. So he ends up going to Tulane. Dude ends up wrecking shop for 3 years at Tulane. And he was a hell of a player. Talked to Sam on the show about him yesterday, and it was, he's like, this kid, go back and watch that Tulane game. He's in the backfield consistently. Now, I think he only made 1 tackle for loss, but he finished with 6 tackles, was wrecking shop on the Oklahoma offensive line.
Right. Absolutely. And look, Ryan, obviously you're not going to just replace Isaiah Thomas and Perron Winfrey, just like swoop replace them. But, I mean, going to next year, you're looking at Jeffrey Johnson and obviously Jonah Laulu, who comes in from Hawaii, who we talked about before. And then, Reggie Grimes, Jalen Redmond. Not bad. Not a bad situation. Could be a lot worse, certainly, for Oklahoma going into next year.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You thought he looked good against Oklahoma. Well, Perron Winfrey learned this year. He's going to look a lot better with Jalen Redmond lining up right beside him. That helps you out. He did not have that luxury at Tulane. And he's a guy that brings some extra beef to this defensive line. It'll look more like a defensive line you were accustomed to under Brent Venables than Alex Grinch. On Tulane's website, I think he's listed at 295, but it's pretty reliable from a bunch of Tulane people that he played at 310, close to 315. That's not what had become the norm out of your defensive tackle spot under Alex Grinch. So it's a shift that not only brings experience production to that defensive line, helps plug a hole left by a Perron Winfrey, but it's a guy that you're not relying on Schmitty to go out there and put 20 pounds of muscle on somebody in one off-season cycle, because that's not going to happen. You're going to be carrying a ton of bad weight if you have to put that much size on one person in that short amount of time, and that's just not what you want as far as getting guys prepared to be where they need to be in the future. So it does 2 things for you. Brings you immediate size, but also some experience impact up front, and it can only be seen as a big-time addition, I think, for this defensive line.
Yeah, real quick, I said he played 3 years at Tulane. He played 4 years at Tulane. He was on the field for 4 seasons, and now he's a grad transfer, or at least a super senior transfer, however that's going to work. So I think he's got a future on the Oklahoma defensive line.
Yeah, and like I said, Venables continues to add veterans. Most of the guys, and there's a couple exceptions, we'll get into one of them in a second, but most of these guys have played a lot of football. I mean, we talked about that before. Jeffrey Johnson, certainly another one. And then same thing goes for the next guy they picked up, which was Wyoming cornerback C.J. Colden. I think that's how you say it. Hopefully I said that correctly. His stats are nuts last year. He had, in 13 games, 67 total tackles, but the real eye popper, 10 pass deflections. 10. That's a ton. I think the high on OU was like 4. Like Key Lawrence had like 4, I think was the team high. That's a lot. And he played a lot of football, also playing every game, played a lot of snaps. Just, again, very similar to Johnson in that just a veteran guy you're going to put in. You feel good. I feel like C.J. Colden, then we'll get to the other guys, are going to play a lot. I mean, the secondary really got replenished in a big way over these last few days. This is a good pickup right here. I think a sneaky, I think one that going next year, they're going to be like, man, they're glad that they got him kind of a guy.
He's definitely an experienced guy. When you talk about leading the team in tackles as a cornerback, 67 tackles.
Right.
And that 10 passes defense thing might tell you one of two things. One, he's really good at anticipating and getting his arm in and batting down passes. Number two, he's not great at coverage, and opposing quarterbacks are constantly challenging him, throwing the football in his direction. Maybe the other guy on the other side of the field was excellent in coverage, so maybe that's part of that. That's usually what happens with some of those numbers when it gets skewed like that. But I'm not downgrading him. I think he's obviously he's got talent. He's a very physical player, 6'1" corner. Man, that's what you want. Listen, Speed D had its drawbacks, but one thing that Alex Grinch did, there was no doubt, had the thing going in the right direction, and that's get bigger cornerbacks, bigger safeties, and this is another move in that direction. This kid's from Illinois. He's not from some nowhere town in Wyoming that no one's ever heard of, and they played 2A football or something. No, he's from Illinois. He's from Bellevue, Illinois. He knows what he's doing. He came up in a good system, so he's a talented kid. I can't wait to see what he does.
Yeah, and especially this isn't meant to be a knock on either Colden or Morrison, who we're going to talk about here in a second, but both those guys, they can come in, be veteran depth at the worst this year, and then you're not saddled with them for 4 or 5 years if it doesn't work out or guys happen to outperform them, which is kind of, I think, the best case scenario is that if those corners that are already in place, some of the young guys buried on the depth chart, outplay them in camp, then it's a no harm, no foul type thing. But Colden has shown at Wyoming that he can handle the load if he's the guy that gets turned to. It'll depend a lot on that corner rotation, but by no means, again, I don't see many downsides to Colden and again, Morrison we'll talk about here in a second as far as just addition to depth in that secondary, because look, we kind of talked about it, but when you've got 6 guys who were quote unquote starters on last year's defense gone via transfers or NFL or whatever, you're going to have to fill some spots. And secondary is not a place that you usually see a ton of true freshmen or freshmen getting broken in. Last year was kind of the exception to that in Norman. And so bringing in this veteran help, it's going to help that secondary, no doubt.
Absolutely. And so, like I said, adding veterans, Johnson, Colden, both veterans. Treymorrison from North Carolina, who we'll get into in just a minute, veteran, played a lot of football at UNC. Not the case with Louisville cornerback Kenai Walker. A bit of a busting the mold here from the other transfer pickups that they've had. Kenai Walker comes over, class of 2021 guy. So he was a true freshman last year. He played one game. I don't know how much he played in that game, but he played one game. He's a former 3-star recruit, has the size, Hoove again, 6'2", about 200 pounds, maybe a little below. See what he actually comes in at, whenever spring comes around. So kind of a different, as what, Ryan was just saying with these veteran guys who's kind of no harm, no foul. This is kind of an investment pickup, obviously. You're looking at a guy who's going to be in your program for 3-4 years, different than the other, pretty much across the board. The other transfer additions they've made have been veteran players who play a lot of football. Not the case with Walker. He's, somebody you're kind of betting on his potential and where he's going to go as opposed to like where he is presently, what he's going to do for you in 2022. It's more what is he going to do for you down the road.
Yeah, he strikes me as you mentioned 6'2", 194. He's a football player, and he's a guy that's young, inexperienced. But here's the deal, guys. He was recruited by and played in the SEC, the ACC at Louisville. The ACC. It's the same conference Brent Venables was in last year when this kid was playing. So I don't. He didn't have any offers now from Clemson. Let's not get it twisted. But I'm sure Venables knew who he was. Venables isn't one of those, as a defensive coordinator, you're not going to study another team's defense, right? But word gets around in conferences, in conference meetings, and on the recruiting trail, who you've got and guys that you've got on your roster, and this kid can play, that kid can play. So I'm thinking that Venables knows very much, and not just Brent, but some of the people that he's bringing with him from that area of the country, from the ACC, from the SEC, who have ties throughout the South. They look at this kid and say, yeah, we saw him in high school. Yeah, we noticed him here. We saw his freshman year maybe at Louisville. He's ready to come play at Oklahoma. I think this is another intriguing prospect.
And not to get too into the weeds of what we do sometimes in this job, but though he only really featured in one game in the secondary, I was digging through some Louisville participation charts, the most official things you can find, right? And it looks like he participated in 5 games this year. So I bet that would be special teams, which to me, though you may say, oh, well, so it'll come into the sophomore. Well, to me, if he participated in 5 games, then, and again, that's pending Louisville's participation chart being accurate. So who knows there? But
I'm sure
if he did, then he's a guy that you can bring in, and he can spend a year in Schmitty's strength system. He can spend a year getting coached under Valai. OU's new quarterbacks coach, and doesn't necessarily have to play or burn a year of eligibility. So if he comes in and he can be an immediate contributor, awesome. You just found a guy that can be a part of your secondary for the next 3 years, right? And if not, he can still redshirt, and you can still get a contributor for the next 2 or 3 years after a whole year of that kind of growth. So to me, that's someone that, like when you talk about on the field stuff, I have nothing to give you, unfortunately, because he just didn't play a ton this year, right, for Louisville. But he's a guy that has that possibility there in him. So again, one of those things that it can't really be a negative, because that's the kind of depth you like, right? It's a guy that you can come in, has that frame that you want, and he'll be able to be coached in your system, doesn't have any quote unquote bad habits or anything like that, and they'll have plenty of time to work with him for him to be a contributor in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. His stats page only had him attending 1 game, but that maybe he only had the tackle in that game. I don't know. Who knows? College stats can sometimes get a little wonky depending on where you're looking. Yeah. So, totally believe that he might have got in there in some capacity in more games. So that's very possible. Either way, hasn't played a lot. True freshman last year, so we'll see what he can grow into here moving forward under Venables and obviously that defensive staff and Schmitty, like Ryan was saying. And then fourth, we talked about a little bit. Treymorrison comes over from North Carolina, UNC guy. I mean, talk about a veteran. And again, we just talked about the number of games can be wonky, but I have him at 44 career games. That's a lot of football. Lot of football. And he's just a consistent player. I mean, this is his 4 seasons. 46 tackles, 31 tackles, 39 tackles, 47 tackles. Just consistent, just steady, good. Just good. You know what I mean? Not blowing your mind, not having a bad year, just consistent. You know what you're getting year to year. Couple of picks, some pass deflections, about 3 or 4 every single season. Just a good veteran player. I think it's just kind of that simple here. What's your read on Treymorrison coming over? Obviously, he's played 4 years of college football. He's expecting to come over and start, and play. He just left a situation where he was starting for a Power 5 team. I don't think he's coming over to just be in the rotation. He's coming over because he expects to be a big part of this defense, in 2022.
Yeah. Here's what I like about this kid. What is he, 5'10", 190, something like that, 5'11"-ish? So
I got him at 5'9" here. But
is that right, 5'9"? Okay.
That's what Sports Reference has. But
so if you look at, I went back and looked at, like Ryan talked about, I went back and looked at some of their game books, and he started at nickel, he started at free safety, and he started at corner. And by all accounts, he did good at all 3. It was just a situation where that put their best 11 on the field at North Carolina, allowed them to put their best players out there, just being able to move him around. So you talk about experience. Yes, he's got 44 games under his belt and 160 tackles, whatever that number is. But he's also got a lot of experience in specific situations, playing corner, and I don't know if it's a right corner, left corner, field corner, boundary corner. We don't know exactly, but the guy knows how to play nickel. And the guy knows how to play free safety. And as you know, free safety, strong safety are interchangeable, or I should say were interchangeable in Alex Grinch's defense. We don't know what Brent's going to do with the safeties yet. But that's something, man. You're recruiting some serious experience. Mac Brown looks at this guy right now and goes, I can't believe we lost him. Geez, to the transfer portal. Oh well, at least he's going to Oklahoma, somebody that's a blue blood that can really appreciate his talents.
Sure.
Everybody okay back there? Sounded like we had some plague sneak in from another room somewhere. Maybe it was my house.
I think that was
There's coughing going on. There's constant coughing in my house.
It is what it is. Cough bubble.
But yeah, no, like I alluded to earlier, you're having to replace both safeties on the back end. So either way, this Oklahoma secondary, you got 5 spots. You feel pretty good about Woody Washington, DJ Graham. You feel good about a battle at nickel, maybe between Broyles and Woody Washington, or Billy Bowman, excuse me. You feel good about Key Lawrence, maybe, hopefully, please, finding a spot on the field. So you still got one more spot to fill. So why not a guy like Treymorrison who can come in, he'll walk in and be a veteran leader of that group on the field, be that kind of guy that they can turn to, pick him up after a bad play, make sure the communication's good, all that stuff. So I think that just from that perspective is he's a guy I expect to play a ton here this year in Norman. I expect him to play a ton. I expect him to play all over the place. I expect him to be a big part of that, especially just vocally, just for what he can bring leadership-wise. Also, real quick, we do have some transfer portal news, finally, as Latrell McCutcheon about 11 minutes ago tweeted his commitment to USC. So Latrell McCutcheon officially headed to USC, and he, of course, disabled replies on his tweet.
Yeah. I don't have Hoove's audio.
You muted yourself, Hoove.
I said, sorry.
He looked really
want all the coughing to come out over the internet again, but no, you knew that was going to break. You knew that was going to break when we started recording this thing.
You would think starting recording the show at 9:30 at night we're safe.
You're
something
safe.
Like that. No.
7:30 Pacific time. So apparently not.
Yeah, 7:30 Pacific. So Treymorrison McCutcheon to USC is now official. There you go.
Someone needs to give these kids an NIL clinic. Like, if you want it to make waves, you got to do it at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. That way, you get the end of the news cycle for that day, and you start it off the next morning.
He did you think he announced his commitment just purely almost like because Benito literally was just ripping him or not Benito, but Perrion and they just had that back and forth like a few hours ago.
No, he waited until we started the podcast. He knew we were sitting here going, has he committed yet? Has he not committed yet? We don't know. Right. Has he committed? He knew.
So Latrell McCutcheon commits. You can read about that on Allsonners.com. It's not there right now, but by the time you listen to the show, it will be. One of us will jump on that. Somebody. And we'll have that for you. So Latrell McCutcheon, USC, official.
Hey, I want to say something about these defensive backs, safeties, corners, whatever you want to call them. Nickel. Between the 3 of them now, I think Colden's best offer out of high school was Wyoming. He took the best offer that he had, which was Wyoming. Walker had a couple of ACC schools, I think, but his best offer, I think he might have been offered by Arkansas. But basically, out of the 3 guys, same with the North Carolina kid. You've got a handful of ACC schools, a couple of bottom level Big Ten schools, and not a ton of attention from a lot of blue blood schools as recruits out of high school. Okay,
sure.
Of all 3 guys, of all those offers, only one came from the Southeastern Conference, and that's Arkansas. Back when Arkansas wasn't very good, so. This is not to crap on those guys' high school accomplishments. This is to praise them for the work that they've done in college, fighting through that stigma of I don't have any big blue blood offers. So I'm going to go out, I'm going to find a school, I'm going to get the best offer I can, I'm going to play football at a high level, and then at the end of my career, boom, look at me now, I'm at the Oklahoma Sooners. I mean, that's to me is a testament of a kid's work ethic, stick-to-itiveness, whatever that characteristic is. I think all 3 of these guys have it. They have that underdog nobody wanted me mentality, chip on their shoulder. So that's just what the Oklahoma defense needs.
Absolutely. So interested to see how all four of those guys look. We'll get a chance to see them soon. Obviously in the spring. Looking forward to that. It'll be a spring game before you know it. The way that this is going, already toward the end of January here, we're going to be talking about spring game stuff like any day, it seems like. So we'll get to see all these guys very, very soon. All right, we're going to take another timeout. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the show with staff stuff. We got a couple of people coming in, somebody going. An OU favorite is on the move, heading elsewhere. Of course, we'll get a basketball update as well. The men just keep on tumbling. The women just keep on winning. It's crazy. So we'll talk about all that stuff next up on the SI Sooners podcast.
Hey, are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman or a car dealership in Oklahoma City or a restaurant in Edmond, or maybe you're a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise and you just want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Well, then consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at all_Sooners.
Final segment of the SI Sooners podcast. We'll wrap up the football part of the show with some staff stuff. We'll start with Damien Washington, former Missouri wide receiver, comes on board as an offensive analyst, which supposedly there's more analyst hires coming. That's kind of been a big thing. It's been very Alabama-y with the analyst hires, tons of them. So Oklahoma athlete Damien Washington, former Missouri wide receiver, who you wrote the story on Allsonners.com about him. Of course, you guys can go check that out. It's still there, not going anywhere. If you want to kind of catch up on him, but you can kind of run through a little bit, just what Oklahoma gets in Washington, where he's been, what he's been doing, and kind of what he brings to the table.
Well, he played at Missouri, right? So he's an SEC guy. That's the main thing. Not really. He played in the Big 12 conference. Actually played against Oklahoma in 2011, I think.
Even though Missouri's in the SEC now, I don't consider Missouri people SEC.
Yeah, I know. It's still tough. But he caught a pass for 45-yard touchdown against the Sooners in the 2000, I believe, 11 game. Maybe it was 2010, 2011. But it was the one that Oklahoma won. And, he was, like I said, caught one pass, 45 yards. He was a good football player. He was a guy that was one of their top receivers during that time in the Gary Pinkel era, toward the end of the Gary Pinkel era, as they transitioned into the SEC. But he's a guy that, he's going to be we think he's going to be the next Dennis Simmons, meaning he's going to coach, quote unquote, the outside receivers. He's going to assist basically Cale Gundy as the receivers coach. That's the way I understand the arrangement. But he's a guy that y'all just 2 years ago was in the Alliance of American Football. Okay.
Heck yeah.
A year ago, 2020, during the pandemic, he was in the XFL playing for the St. Louis Battlehawks, and Jonathan Hayes was the coach, former Bob Stoops assistant coach, right? So he's a guy that just last year was playing football, professional football. So think about that. He's now going to be out there on the sidelines, in the coaching staff room, in the meeting room, in the weight room, whatever, talking, interacting in the locker room with 20-year-old football players. He's a guy that's been through what they've been through just recently. He's a guy that's had a career doing what they're going to try to do. So I think it's a great hire. He's a young guy, he could walk out there right now and probably be the second or third best receiver on the team. He's that good. So this is something that's he's going to be able to impart a message to the young guys of, getting through college and achieving your dream, going and playing pro ball, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. But he can really relate, I think. The way Sam Mays phrased it on our show was, he knows the music. He knows the culture that the young players are coming up right now know. So this is something that, Brent Venables and Ted Roof and those guys, right? You hire Damien Washington to come in and be your assistant wide receivers coach. It's a brilliant move.
Well, it's a little disappointing. It's not going to complete the trifecta, though, and go USFL. It's coming back in April. He did the first two.
That might be next.
Yeah, that might be. Maybe Venables will let him go on a leave for 2
He's only been in coaching for 1 year, though. He coached last year at Southern. that was his first time coaching. Previously, he's been kind of a analyst, assistant kind of guy, staff member kind of guy, not a full-time coach. But he coached last year at Southern and got his feet wet and really liked it. So this is his chosen career.
Do we think maybe that's what Caleb
Ryan,
Williams
what do you think about Damien Washington?
Caleb Williams wants to play under Kevin Sumlin for the Houston Gamblers next year. Is that why he hasn't picked yet?
Houston Gamblers. What's funny is that all those teams have city names, but they're playing the entire league in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah.
Kind of defeats the purpose of
That's
teams
really
having
dumb.
cities.
It'll be nuts.
Really
Go Breakers, though. Lifelong New Orleans Breakers fan. But no, I think that that's something we haven't really talked about amidst all this, right? Is we think we know there are recruiting upgrades on the defensive staff. We think that it'll be a better defensive staff. I feel confident in that. I'm just someone that I need to see it on the field first before I totally buy in. But we think all that stuff. Yeah, we think that Lebby will come in and his offenses, when you look at yardage per game, that they were actually both more productive than OU's under Lincoln Riley the last 2 years. So we think there won't be a major drop-off. What we don't know, though, is what impact losing Dennis Simmons will have to those wide receivers, because he's been widely regarded as one of the best wide receivers coaches in football, all that stuff. So bringing in a lot of help for that wide receiver room, not that Kilgunny can't handle it, but you're just that's big shoes to fill. So being proactive and going out there and getting a guy who can come in and has all of those bona fides, like you just mentioned, who I think it's a big time move just as far as transitioning this staff to the next era of Oklahoma football and replacing some of those pieces that they did lose, because that'll be the harsh reality this fall, is that as much as the vibes around the program are good and all that stuff right now, and there is excitement around the Venables hire, and there is excitement for bringing in Venables' version of defense as opposed to the speed D, which is warranted, there will be some shoes to fill on the offensive side of the football. So I think that grabbing as many wide receiver analysts like that, it can only go to help.
Absolutely. So we'll see what Damien Washington adds to the repertoire for the offensive analyst staff there. And we'll get to see him very soon out there on the field again in the spring stuff here very, very soon. Elsewhere, another addition to the staff. I don't know if staff's the right way to put it, but I guess staff. Well, what's the exact title here for Lee Davis? She comes across. She essentially kind of fills the Annie Hansen role, who followed Lincoln Riley to USC. I should have had her official title pulled up here.
I think it's the director of on-campus recruiting.
Coordinator of on-campus recruiting.
There you go. So coordinator of on-campus recruiting. She comes over from Florida, where she was, well thought of, did a good job out there. Now she comes over and joins Oklahoma. So Lee Davis comes aboard. She was also at some other spots before Florida in the SEC. She was at the Gators for a little while. Now she's with Oklahoma. Obviously, Hoover, it's hard to know too much about what she adds here, obviously, other than just looking at where she just was, which is Florida. Yeah. And, again, seemed to be well thought about there. And we'll see what kind of job she can do in Norman.
This is a hire, I think, that is specific to it speaks to what a lot of programs have done, and that is branch out, hire females like Lincoln Riley did when he hired Annie Hansen, or did Bob hire Annie Hansen? Now I'm getting my she's been there long enough, I think, that Bob actually hired her. But that's something that teams programs have been doing for a few years now. It's diversifying things. It's putting a different look, a different face on your program, because the way she described it was she's the air traffic controller in Oklahoma's at the time Florida's recruiting efforts. Okay, so you've got coaches literally flying in airplanes all across the country, meeting coaches, setting up meetings with players. She's got a short list of they need 3 defensive backs, they need 5 defensive linemen, they need 2 linebackers, they need a quarterback. She's got that position list set up. So here are her candidates on each position, and she's keeping a checklist. And you got to stay very organized. And that's someone, if you can find someone who's got these characteristics, it's huge. So in her specific case, thought this was interesting. If you guys want to read more, it's at allsonners.com. Just scroll down, click the football tab, scroll down, and there's a detailed story on there about her. In her specific case, she grew up the daughter of an Alabama high school football coach. Then her first job after she transferred, I think after 2 years of small college, she transferred to Alabama, and she got into the athletic department, and she got a job working on Nick Saban's staff as a student assistant working with recruiting. And she went from there. She transitioned to Mississippi State. She was there for a handful of years doing the same thing, in the recruiting industry. She wanted to be in and around football because that's what her family is. Her family's of athletics and football, and so she wanted to get out in that. She didn't know she was going to be an athletic trainer or a women's basketball coach or something like that. Well, she said, "No, I'm going to get into the recruiting side of it." So she's been really good at her job by all accounts. You read the stories and talk to people about her. She's really good, really organized, really focused, and really driven, which makes her a great candidate to replace Annie Hansen, because Annie Hansen and the creativity that she had and the drive that she had and the purpose that she had when she took that job over, that really helped Oklahoma's recruiting efforts. I think she's going to slide right in. Lee Davis seems like the next great candidate to do what Brent Venables and those guys need her to do.
Yeah, and she was doing it at programs outside of Alabama. We can put Alabama to the side, but she's doing it at programs that don't have a ton to sell, right? I mean, at Mississippi State, what do you sell? In the SEC, that you can play in that. If you like cowbells, come here. At Florida, you're only selling the pipe dream of potential under Dan Mullen because they never achieved that. They never got close to achieving that. So you marry those efforts and those inroads she's made in the Southeast, which by everything we've seen from how Brent Venables has assembled this staff, Oklahoma wants to be a player in the Southeast as they move to the SEC on the recruiting trail. Now you have actual tangible on-field success to pair that with. So it's a situation where she can come in and she has an upgrade as far as what she's selling, because Oklahoma's facilities can compete. Brent Venables' track record can compete. And oh, by the way, you can actually win things at Oklahoma as opposed to Mississippi State or Florida. So sounds like Oklahoma, another great hire here. And again, they're just beefing up that back room to ensure that they will fit in the SEC when it comes to staffing and commitment to the football program.
Absolutely. So 2 additions there with Davis and with Washington. Did have 1 subtraction as a guy who you know very well. This is who you called a badass, correct? Mr. Ty Darlington is heading to Florida. He's no longer with the Sooners. Obviously was a player at Oklahoma, was a very good one. Has been an analyst, was the QB coach for the bowl game, was a QB coach for a week. Caleb Williams played pretty well in that bowl game. He actually tweeted what did Caleb Williams tweet? He tweeted something about Ty Darlington late last night. It was like 2 a.m. I didn't even see it
My guy or something like that.
Yeah, like this. That's the guy. Something along those lines. Kind of just wishing him well, which is cool to see, of course. And Ty Darlington heads off to Florida. Obviously, I mean, we're really into the weeds as far as it's another analyst. It's not a coach that you see is very visible out in front of you. Their impact on a week to week basis. But obviously, a guy who's been an Oklahoma guy for a long time, player and then analyst, headed somewhere new, headed out to Billy Napier's inaugural staff there with the Gators.
Yeah, Ty tweeted last night that he was moving on, taking another opportunity. And then shortly thereafter, the guy he replaced at OU, Gabe Eichard, tweeted, according to an unnamed source, wonder who that could be.
Yeah, no kidding.
Said that he was taking the job at Billy Napier with Billy Napier at Florida, and was going to be an offensive analyst on their staff. He's a guy that coached. If you look at he was hired in 2017. Spent a couple of years as a analyst, I think, but he became a grad assistant so he could get hands-on coaching. In 2020, he was elevated to grad assistant. That sounds weird, but that's how it works. He could do some hands-on coaching with the quarterbacks. He coached OU quarterbacks in 2020 and 2021, and then when Lincoln Riley left, he took on a bigger role for the bowl game.
Sure.
So that was interesting. I think he was qualified to do that, and he struck up a relationship with every one of those guys, and that's why you see Caleb Williams reach out and say, "That's my guy." He's a guy you guys that he won the Danny Werfel Trophy for outstanding citizenship in all of college football. Okay, so not just citizenship, but community service and character and all that, integrity and that kind of stuff. It's one of those awards, the Danny Werfel Trophy.
Right.
But then he won the academic Heisman. Oklahoma center won the Academic Heisman, which is the William V. Campbell Trophy for scholastic achievement by a football player. And after he won those 2 awards, his last game was at the Orange Bowl in 2015. And the last pre-media day press conference, he walked out in front of me. He was headed toward the bus back to the hotel, and I was like chasing him out. I said, "Whoa!" I said, "I need to shake your hand one more time because we're probably not going to talk after the bowl game, but I just wanted to let you know how much I respect you and for doing things the right way." And it meant something to me to cover somebody who had his act together so much that he won 2 national awards for being a citizen badass and a scholar badass. I thought that was amazing. So he was just
Right.
like he was looking at me like, "Oh yeah, no, Mr. Hoover, it's no problem. I'm glad to do it." I was just like, I appreciate you saying that. He was so cool and shocked that somebody in the media was paying him a compliment for making good grades, I guess. But I just felt compelled to do that before he finished his career.
Well, and the other thing too is, you mentioned his role with the quarterbacks during the Alamo Bowl. I mean, Bob Stoops said it on, was it the signing day press conference that him and Brent were up there together when he was laying out the staff for the Alamo Bowl. And he had basically said, like, Ty Darlington's going to be the quarterback guy because he'd sat in every quarterback meeting since Lincoln Riley had arrived on campus. So when you take a guy that's obviously that intelligent, played that position where you have to understand the entire offense comprehensively, and was able to apply it as you said, John, Caleb Williams showed some growth between Bedlam and the Alamo Bowl that we hadn't necessarily seen out of him all year long. Not saying that's all Ty Darlington, but Ty Darlington had a big role in that. It's no shock that he was going to be heavily sought after by anyone looking to install an offense, whether it be an on-field role or an analyst. And again, for some of these guys, I know Ty Darlington's no you guy, but moving somewhere else, sometimes it's the best thing to go to another step outside of what you're comfortable with before you really ascend into what you are as a coach. Brent Venables spoke to that when he talked about having to leave Oklahoma to go to Clemson, how he had to relearn everything from the ground up, and it made him a better person for it. So a good move for Ty Darlington, and a good move for everyone involved, as you saw, not just the players, but Brent Venables come out, give him a big congratulations on Twitter, all that stuff.
And sure. Gabe, as you guys probably saw, Gabe tweeted today that there's a replacement coming. Gabe's pretty connected, as y'all know, when it comes to the Oklahoma coaching staff. So we can expect that probably announcement in the next 24 hours would be my guess.
Yeah, pretty sure I have a good beat on who that is. I don't want to speculate or anything. I'll tell you.
Sam Bradford's coming back.
It's a former player.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I know who it is. My hint of who I think it is that he was on a staff that OU played last year. Put it that way. That'll be my hint of who I think it is. I'm not reporting that. That's who I think it is.
Okay.
We'll see in due time. I think Hoover already knows what I'm talking about. So that'll wrap up football conversation. We're continuing to wait for Caleb and Dart and all that fun stuff. And of course, it never stops. I'm sure they'll make more additions. They'll make more subtractions, portal, all that here coming up in the very near future. Let's wrap up with a little bit of basketball like per usual. We'll start with the women here who got another win tonight. They went into Morgantown, beat West Virginia. They're ranked 14 in the AP poll right now. That is nuts. That is crazy. And I tweeted this the other day, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts on it. And you guys can obviously expound on just what they've been doing. But, I mean, Jenny Baranczyk is in the midst of as good of a single season coaching job as like any OU coach ever. I mean, to take over the program where it was just stale and bad. I mean, not making the tournament, not even really flirting with making the tournament those last several years under Sherry Cole. And I'm not trying to just bag on Sherry Cole or something. She was obviously a great coach, Hall of Fame coach, all that. But those last few years were rough. She steps right in, and what are they going to be, a 3 seed, a 4 seed in March Madness potentially if they keep going? That's crazy.
I think she's in the early conversation for National Coach of the Year.
Has to be.
Because they finished their game today at West Virginia, 88-76 victory at West Virginia. It's their 5th win in a row in Morgantown and their 8th consecutive road win, which is the second longest number in the nation, which is phenomenal. Goes back to last year, obviously. But she is as they finished their game tied or not tied. They were in sole possession of second place, and later in the night, Iowa State lost. So Oklahoma is now tied for first. Even though Oklahoma lost to Iowa State, they're technically still tied for first place at the top of the Big 12 conference standings. She's got to be in the conversation for national coach of the year.
Yeah, and they're just, here's the thing, like, it doesn't matter, right, how fun or unfun, all that matters is what the end score is. But we said it before, the way that they just play, if someone else scores, all right, cool, get the ball under the basket, outlet, get down the floor, don't need to use any clock, get up, get going. It's a ton of fun. They were saying on the broadcast it's their best start since the 06-07 season. So it's not just, hey, they're playing well, they're going to be a tournament team. It's like, no, this is a team that's going to make some noise in March. This is a team that has a shot, like you just said, John, to take back that Big 12 crown, which is something that hadn't even entered people's minds over the last decade. And that's a lot to do with what Mulkey did at Baylor and all that stuff. And I get that she's not there anymore, but still, to even have a team that could rival that, it hadn't been a decade since Sherry Cole had one of those teams that you could say, well, you can even try to start having the conversation. Can they challenge? Can they win a game here or there? So it's been incredibly impressive. They've got a quick little road trip here, and then 1 week from today, next Wednesday, back in the Lloyd Noble Center, they'll be hosting Oklahoma State for Bedlam. That'll be another big one, just because, look, Oklahoma State's not ranked or anything right now. A little shaky start to the season for them, but that's still one of those games that if Jenny Baranchek can reinsert herself as a dominant coach in this Bedlam rivalry, it'll do nothing more than continue to keep those good vibes rolling throughout Norman with that program.
And here's what I like about this team. They don't have the 6'5", 6'6", dominating athletes in the post. They don't have those big, huge swing guards, swing forwards on the perimeter. They just got a bunch of basketball players that, you line them up and look at the two teams and you're like, well, I think this team's going to win. You'd pick against Oklahoma every time. They don't look spectacular. She doesn't have a bunch of athletes out there. What she's got is a bunch of good basketball players who do exactly what she says. Unlike, we'll get to a little bit later, Porter Moser's team, got a bunch of new guys who do what he says, but not every time, and it costs them from time to time. Jenny Baranchek's team, they do what she says. And here's the thing, guys, they're second in the nation in scoring. They're first in the nation in assists. They're a fun basketball team to watch tonight at West Virginia that you'd see, plodding up and down the court a couple of times. And then the next time out, like Ryan said, they inbound the ball, 2 passes, layup on the other end. Like, where's that been? This team, they've got finishers at the rim. They've got the Big 12's all-time leading scorer in Taylor Robertson. She's been fantastic. She stepped up and hit 3 shots today that were just like, okay, if you're not going to guard me, I guess I'll shoot. Nothing but net. Pure, nothing but net. So, and then Maddie Williams is a double-double machine. I think she had 23 and 9 tonight. Man, I don't know if they're going to be able to make a postseason run because they, like I said, they don't have that 5-star elite WNBA talent that's just pouring out of the roster. But they can outplay pretty much everybody they play, whether they have that talent or not. Again, I saw more talent on the West Virginia team. I saw more talent on the Baylor team. They beat both of them, and they beat both of them comfortably. So we'll see how this team does later in the season.
And tonight's win against West Virginia, too, was without Kelly Washington, their true freshman starting point guard, who was in health and safety protocols. So we've kind of documented they've had some injury in and out of the lineup, stuff like that. This team just keeps on chugging, no matter who's on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to, it seems like right now, if the stars align, right, and they play really well and their bracket is friendly, who knows how far they could go. But, I mean, I think you have to put them on the Final Four watch. I mean, if they're going to hang around the top 10 and beat teams like Baylor and all the other great wins they've had this year, again, it have to be a stars align. It's kind of the case for anybody to make a deep run in March Madness that way. But I think they should have everybody's attention already, certainly. But once March Madness rolls around, keep an eye on them because they have a shot to go far. If things break their way, they have a shot to go very, very far. And like you said, Ryan, they play a fun brand of basketball. They score in the 80s and 90s every game. I mean, that's what you want. You want up and down. It's very opposite of the men's team, like who's fallen on hard times here. And look, I think we all think that Porter Moser is the guy. Like, he's going to get Oklahoma to where they need to be. It's just a matter of what he can do with this year's group, which is such a hodgepodge. All these transfers he brought in, only 3 guys who played, who are, meaningful players back from last year's team. They lose again last night to Kansas, and they were right there. It was close again. They easily could have won. They easily could have beat, TCU. They easily could have, won the Butler game if they lost early in the year. They've it's kind of been that way, but they're not very good in close games. They lose again last night, like I said, to Kansas. Moser had the place rocking. He said that earlier the week that he's on a mission to fill up that arena. He did a pretty good job. It was pretty darn full. It was loud. There was a ton of students there. But they lose. They lose again. And like you said, Hoove, just kind of not being disciplined all the time. And the offense just looks hard. It just looks hard to score. It seems like every time they score, it was a tough bucket. Not a lot of just wide open looks for that offense right now. And it doesn't get any easier. The schedule is so unforgiving in the Big 12. They have number 5 Baylor coming in on Saturday. Then they go to Morgantown. And then they go to number 2 Auburn after that. So this losing streak could run up a lot more if they don't find a way to play some really good basketball. It's rough times right now for the men's team.
Yeah, three losses in a row, and as you said, it could be 6, could go more.
Easily 6, yeah.
Easily 6. But I think they'll end it. I think they'll score an upset somewhere, whether it's West Virginia or Baylor. Auburn's playing as good as anybody in the country right now. That's going to be hard to do.
Or have arguably the number 1 pick on their team.
Yeah. They're a team that I think they're still showing a lot of growth under Porter. Ryan had a great question for the post-game press conference about, or actually it was pregame where he answered, where I got to ask him because Ryan was on the air, I think, about shot selection and patience in the offense and not falling into the trap of hero ball. And, how do you balance that urgency with, well, shots aren't falling. We got to do something. Maybe it'll be me this time versus, run the sets, run the offense, do what coach wants us to do. And he said that's the number 1 problem facing the team right now, basically, is the way he used some phraseology there. That's the number 1 thing they got to figure out is how to be more patient on offense, run the offense. And then you saw it play out against Kansas, where they were running the offense, they were running the sets, and they go on a 20-2 run. Kansas goes ice cold over whatever it was, 4 minutes, ice cold after taking a 12-point lead. And the next thing you know, it's like, wait a minute, where did our scoring go? Guys started feeling it. Guys started getting this momentum going. Like, hey, we can. I can take the next shot. Give me the basketball. I want to. You start seeing a little bit of hero ball creep up, and you start seeing the shooting percentage go down, down, down. Yeah. And what happens? Kansas ties the game in the last couple of minutes almost effortlessly. It's like they were up 6, and all of a sudden it was tied. And Kansas and Bill Self showed their ability to call a dang inbounds play. Am I right? I mean, they score off those inbounds plays 3 times down the stretch, and it was just a little too much KU basketball for Oklahoma.
Yeah, Bill Self did a really nice job there down the stretch. Abaji got going. Kind of was that simple. Ryan, you watched this game at 2 a.m., you said. Takeaways in your stupor, your flu stupor, watching this game after the fact, Hoove style. I'm going to call watching games way after the fact Hoove style.
Yeah, I think that the problem this team's having, and it's the problem I think everyone had correctly diagnosed preseason, is there's 90 seconds left in the game and you're tied. Who are you going to give the ball to go get you a bucket? They don't have that guy. And I think that because of just the nature of basketball, things like that, in crunch time, you want someone who's up for that moment. It's different calling a play with 5 minutes left in the first half versus 90 seconds left in the game with it on the line in a packed arena, all that stuff. And while Elijah Harkless early in the season showed signs of being that clutch scorer, you saw it against TCU in that overtime period where he just dribbled into 3 dudes and chucked up a terrible look, something that Porter Moser was very upset about in that post game. I think that it's that there's just that breakdown, and I don't know if there's an answer for that. none of these guys have really been that guy. Like Tanner Groves has been the go-to guy right at Eastern Washington, but he hasn't been asked to close out Big 12 conference games every single night all year long. So I'm not sure there's really a fix to that. Porter's going to keep preaching what he preaches, but I think that's just the limiting factor on this team. It's what everyone had going into the season. And I think they played incredibly well during the non-conference and maybe raised a lot of people's expectations, mine included, of what they could be. And now they're just kind of coming back to reality a little bit of, oh yeah, when you're playing the nation's best night in, night out, those holes in the roster show. So I'm not sure there really is a fix to that other than the other things that Porter preaches, which is they're going to have to play that elite defense at all times, which they've done a really nice job of doing. There haven't been a ton of stretches outside of that Iowa State game where the Cyclones were just hitting unconscious looks that you've gone, wow, the defense is awful. And the other thing they could do is if they don't turn the ball over 20 times a game, that would be ideal. They still have some of these dumb turnovers, not down the stretch, just over the course of the game. So really, to me, they've got to eliminate those turnovers. That way, hopefully they can just avoid those really, really close games down the stretch, which you're going to get some of those in the Big 12. You just are. So it'll be interesting to see how they go the rest of the way here, but they need to find a go-to guy, and I'm just not sure they have one on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, offense just looks hard, and it's just tough shots. And, even when guys play well, Jordan Goldwire had a pretty good bounce-back game yesterday. Didn't matter. And like I said, at least Porter is doing a good job on the fan part of it because it was packed. It was energetic, and the students were loud and all that stuff. It just didn't – you see that Marlins man was there? I was starstruck a little bit that Marlins man was there.
I didn't see that.
That was a double take.
Pizza? Did he get some of the 200 pregame pizzas that Porter handed out?
That's a good question. I don't think he did. I don't think so. I talked to him for just a quick moment for the game.
Yeah.
That is a way to get it. If I was a student and you told me free pizza, especially when I have like $1.92 in my bank account, I would have been all over that. So, yeah, that's money from Moser. Good call on his part.
Yeah, I think seeing your Marlins man pick pregame was the first time it really had set in. It's like, dang it, I'm missing like the biggest game on the schedule. There's like 3 big games on the schedule every year. You slog through the UT Arlingtons and the Rogers State so that you can have a great seat to watch OU in Kansas and Bedlam and all that stuff. And I was like, dang, you flew.
Yeah, it was really poor time. Are you going to be able to be at the Baylor game on Saturday or no?
I don't know. We'll see. Thankfully, I don't have any since it's not COVID. I don't have COVID quarantine restrictions, right? Because that would have definitely been inside the 5-day window. So it'll just be a matter of, can I sit upright for 3 hours and think in a loud arena? So we'll see.
Well, it's still 3 days away, so we'll see how you're feeling on Saturday afternoons. That's what's up next for the men. Got to find a way at some point. Playing Kansas, Baylor, and Auburn in a 4-game stretch, that is brutal. And the other game of that being at Morgantown. I mean, that is just nightmare stuff. That TCU game really stings that they didn't get it. That was there to be had, and they didn't get it. They scored 58 in an overtime game against TCU. Can't happen.
Yeah.
So there you go. Men got to find a way to get it going if they're going to make the tournament. Women, meanwhile, cruising. Certainly going to make the tournament and maybe looking at a real high seed when that time comes. All right, that's it. Episode 106 in the books. Hopefully you guys are healthier for 107. Feeling up to it. Next week we'll get back on the regular grind. I mean, I feel weird saying this after last week, but surely by next week's show we know where Caleb Williams is headed. We know where Jaxson Dart is headed, but who knows how long. These guys may take it all the way to, like Ryan said, maybe the summer. Who knows? So be sure to catch that episode. We'll talk all about that stuff. You catch all our shows, of course, on the SI Sooners podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcast. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the SI Sooners podcast. It's also posted on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the player and listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. Of course, again, you can watch these shows now on John Hoover Media, the YouTube page, if you want to watch them video style. We hope moving forward throughout the rest of this off season. So that's it for Josh Callaway, I always do that. I'm Josh Callaway. For John Hoover and Ryan Chapman, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys next time.